Okay, great. So welcome to Mahamudra for the people. All my weird little sticks are falling down. I don't know what to do. It's one of those weeks. Um, so we're going to continue where we left off on practice of Shine. Um, and we will begin though with the four thoughts that turn the mind to Dharma. Uh, and the reason for this is simply because this is helpful, and also within the context of uh, the Karmakaju Mahamudra. This is a really kind of classical and important kind of contemplation. But I have with me right now this fossil, right? And I use this, and I have this because um, it is 300 million years old. And why it's nice to have something, near to you that's 300 million years old is because your problems really can't compare to something that is this old, right? So when we stop to consider, and we'll begin the four thoughts that turn the mind to Dharma with the preciousness of this human birth. Uh, so we can say that in one real way, a very, very real way, our body is like the Vajrasana in Bodh Gaya, right? So the Vajra seat where all the Buddhas sit. It said, there's this, I don't know, has anyone here been to Bodh Gaya? Have you seen? Okay. Okay, good. So have you seen the Vajrasana?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so right under the Bodhi tree uh,
Nice.
is the throne, right? And in the throne is basically symbolized as this kind of Vajra seat, and it is a place where it is said that all future Buddhas will come and sit, and when they achieve awakening. And really, in a very real way, our body is exactly the same. Right? When we achieve awakening, it will be right here. It will be in this body. Right? And so, in this way, your body is sacred. When your body is sacred for other reasons, within the context of Tantra or Vajrayana, the body is a host to many, many different kinds of deities. Has anybody here done any deity yoga? You don't practice? Yeah. Okay. So, one of my favorites is Vajrayogini. And so in the Karmakaju Vajrayogini, right at the level of the brow, this chakra is where Vajradikini lives. And the level of the throat is where Ratnadikini lives. The level of the heart is where Pema lives. The level of the navel is where Karmadikini lives. And each one of them have an entourage of various numbers of dakinis. So 64 dakinis in the navel, 8 dakinis in the heart, 16 dakinis in the throat, 32 dakinis, in the head center. And so this is, one example of all the different deities that exist in the body. But then for every system of Tantra, there are other different kinds of deities that exist, right? So our body is an ecosystem. It's an ecosystem in one way because we're filled with germs and bacteria and viruses that are percolating, and maybe some of us even have a parasite or two growing inside. And so we're an ecosystem that way, of course, but we're a spiritual ecosystem because we have all of these deities within our body. We're, a Buddha ecosystem in the sense that it is our body that is in the process of slowly transforming like a caterpillar into a Buddha, right? And so this makes our body sacred. This moment in our life that all of us are gathered here around Dharma makes this life precious and meaningful as well. There's so many other things we could be doing. We could be working in circuses or down at the racetracks or wherever we like to be, right? We could be hanging out under bridges somewhere, doing weird things. We could be trying to cheat people out of money with three card Monte or all sorts of things. right? But we're not. We're gathering here to, believe it or not, we're gathering here to practice shine, shamatha, right? All of these things are sacred. And then, of course, the trajectory of how you came to connect to Dharma is also a path of, you could say, a path of sanctity, right? From every single teacher that you've ever had, every single Dharma book that you've ever read that has inspired you, every single realization that may have arisen within the context of your experience of meditation, all of these things, right, are kind of building up the the sanctity or the power or the preciousness of our lives, right? And so this is important to reflect on. Sometimes we can wake up and we can feel useless or meaningless or, whatever. And even though we feel this way, from time to time, there's still this profundity uh, inherent in our being. And so then death and impermanence. And so this is where my fossil comes in. So this is 300 million years old. It's a bit of a root, like a segment of a root, and all these little bumps are where there were these little hairs, like that would go into the soil, right? And so I like having this around because when I feel old, I look at this. Oh, you're not that old. When I feel like I'm running out of time, wow, you know, how strange that I could be so obsessed with however long I might live, whatever that time frame is, when compared to this 300 million year old fossil, that's not really a lot. And think of how many beings have come and gone since this 300 million year old fossil, first came to be, right? Since it was, when it was organic matter, how many things have died over the past 300 million years? So many, right? And weirdly enough, somehow we tend to think that we are exempt from that, right? But we're not, right? So we are impermanent. This world system is impermanent. No nation state that we know was around when this fossil, right? And even the continents, right? What this planet looked like was radically different, right? All of these ideas, right? All of these concepts uh, tend to create a tremendous amount of suffering. Who here has ever been in some kind of phase of their life where they felt that I should be doing more by the age I am? Tony is nodding their head. Yeah, exactly. Right. So all these people, myself included, right? I'm practically dead and I haven't done everything I wanted to do. Right. So we have these ideas, oh, by the time I'm X age, I should have done this, or, Y age, I should be, sitting on a throne in some monastery in Tibet. Some weird thing. All of these weird ideas, right? And the beautiful thing about weird ideas is that they are impermanent too. So all of our strange, massive like ego designs about how incredible we're going to be. I am going to save the world. I am going to save the universe. I am going to save Vajrayana Buddhism. I'm going to propagate Vajrayana Buddhism. I'm going to give my son a cookie. Yes, there you go. I was able to accomplish that before I was 50. Yes. See, and that's why this life is precious. Right? And of course, actually within the context of shamatha or shine, right, it's very interesting. When we practice shamatha or shine, what are we doing? We're learning how to be able to experience the mind at rest, right? Get comfortable with that. Right? And when the mind is at rest, or in order to develop a relationship to that, we have to also develop a relationship to the movement, right? The constant movement of thought, of emotion, of experience. Right? And so if we practice shamatha or shine, this means that we have to be able to at least accept impermanence, right? The impermanence of everything that comes and goes. And thank goodness there's impermanence around us, right? My root teacher used to say, to me sometimes, death is really compassionate because it wipes the slate clean, right? So me and all of my silly ideas of who I should be, and by the time I turn 50, I should do this, and by the time I turn 60, I should do that. And when we die, this narrative gets swept away, right? And we get some other kind of fresh start. So next time I'll come back as a worm. And hopefully none of you will be good gardeners, so you can leave me alone. I won't get cut in half by a trowel or some other shovel or something like this. But impermanence is a beautiful thing, right? And impermanence is usually the thing that gives things meaning. Like this fossil, I don't know how much it's worth, but I know if I go down to the sidewalk, I won't find any there. And because it's relatively rare, it has a little bit more value. Right? And this is one thing that impermanence kind of helps us with. It helps us to be able to appreciate the comings and goings of things. If we can let our mind relax a little bit, which is exactly what shamatha does. And then karma, cause and effect. How amazing that this fossil was from some massive tree 300 million years ago in some other part of the world. And a bit of its fossilized root ended up making its way to South Brooklyn, where I am. Right? And it's not that I didn't go, with a pickaxe and find it myself. And I definitely didn't steal it from a museum. But somehow this thread of karma caused it to end up somehow here on my little meditation table here. When we stop to consider, for example, my son, Marcus, who's home from school with pink eye, right? So there's the karma of him getting pink eye, but then there's the karma of him being my son and me being his father. And then there's this odd karma. He and I are born on the same day, right? We share a birthday. So there's that karma too. So all of these threads coming together. Right? And then all of us take a moment to consider where your great, 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 great grandparents may have lived, right? And the amazing kind of quality or aspect of karma that has led all of us together to be able to be in relationship in this way around dharma. That's pretty incredible as well. And so this net of interrelationship, the net of karma, is something we can never really escape from. Right? But we can learn how to be able to shift our relationship to it. We can experience the beauty, the wisdom, the rarity of it. Everybody makes such a big deal out of diamonds, right? But they don't make such a big deal out of sitting next to an interesting person on a subway that you've never met before, right? That's equally as rare, perhaps even more rare, actually. Right? And for practitioners of Mahamudra and practitioners of Dzogchen, karma is really the place to be, right? Being in relationship with the flow of things and just being open and settling into ease. And I'll have a nice little quote I'll share a little bit later to this end. And then the dissatisfactory nature of samsara, right, is the last of these four thoughts. So who here has suffered a little bit over the past day? Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah, just a little bit. Right. Well, take a moment to just feel into what causes the shift from suffering to the cessation of suffering. Right? Not much changes. When we're not suffering, it's not like we find ourselves in a different environment. It's not like gods and goddesses come and massage us when we wake up when we're not suffering. Although that would be nice. Right? The samsara and nirvana are two sides of the same kind of coin. I don't have a coin here, but two sides of the same thing, right? There's Rigpa, awareness, and Ma-Rigpa, ignorance. When we settle into an experience of ignorance and we don't know what is going on, and we don't have any clarity, we don't have any insight, we tend to be tossed about, right? We tend to be feeling a lot of feelings and thinking a lot of thoughts. And when there is Ma-Rigpa or ignorance, we externalize our relationship to these things. We become highly reactive to these things. We want to escape certain feelings and thoughts. We need to push others away. We get involved in odd things like exorcisms and, all sorts of things to keep things at bay. Some people wear garlic around their necks. Others wear crosses to keep vampires away. Right? But when we have Rigpa, right, when we settle into awareness, it just means that we know what is happening, right? We are able to know, experience, see. And there's this opportunity in that to let things just be, right? And not have to direct or control, to not have to be in the driver's seat, right? To not feel forced to make things better, more workable, etc. So these are very useful contemplations, sometimes called the four thoughts to Dharma, sometimes called the ordinary preliminaries, right? These contemplations that are typically done before doing Nunjo practices, these kinds of things. But it could be done at any time. It's worth, waking up and beginning to contemplate how lucky we are to wake up, right? So many people don't. So many people didn't. So many beings didn't have that opportunity for a whole host of reasons. So, where we left off last time was, so we're working from Boku Rinpoche. I'm sorry, Boku Rinpoche is opening the door to certainty. And we went through these different methods or techniques for anchoring the mind, right, through the practice of shamatha. And again, there are a couple of things I'm going to repeat. So, the basic attitude, so to speak, or the view that's worth, upholding or informing with or nurturing while we do these practice is as follows. Do not reflect, right? So this has to do with the past. Do not conceive. This has to do with the future. Do not think. This has to do with the present. Do not meditate. Do not analyze. Rest naturally. Boku Rinpoche says that the spontaneous, ordinary awareness is free of stopping and creating, refusal and acceptance, hope or fear, attachment and grasping to any kind of reality. Right. So does anybody here feel like you need to hold on to reality? Otherwise it will completely disappear and you'll be, yeah. Okay, there you go. Maybe a little bit. Try to let go. Right. And Boku Rinpoche says, when we rest in this essence, relaxed in the relaxation without distraction, with one pointed attention, without grasping to clarity or emptiness, we rest into non-doing. So this is kind of the tone. This is what we bring to the practice, is try to hold this view. Right, and so as we've looked at before, in terms of technique, we looked at anchoring the mind with a physical object, right? And so we can say, just take a look at an object in your field of vision. So I'm looking beyond all of you to what's on the other side of this computer, and it's my shrine. So looking at an object in my shrine. And using whatever the object is, like you're hanging a sweater on a hook. You're just gently placing your visual consciousness onto this object and letting yourself settle into a single pointed kind of concentration without attachment, without aversion, without effort, meaning without trying to control anything, definitely without hope or fear. Letting your body relax, letting your breath be natural. Letting yourself settle into ease while doing this. So the first technique is to use an object in your field of visual reference. So this is described as or classified as using an impure object. I don't know that we need to go there in terms of classifying things like that, but that's what that tradition says. And then the next technique is to train with a pure object. And so this could be an image of the Buddha. Could even be a visualized image of the Buddha, like this felt sense of there being a Buddha right on the crown of one's head. You can close your eyes if that helps too. Or if anybody has facility with respect to Yidam practice, you can imagine yourself in the form of a particular Buddha and focus in this way. We can take even medicine Buddha. Medicine Buddha holding a bowl filled with herbs, healing herbs. His left hand, his right hand holding an aurora flower, blue in color. Krishnisha right there on the crown of his head. Or Vajrasattva, white in color, holding a Vajra at the level of the heart, the bell at the level of the hip. And again, holding this view, do not recall and let go of the past. Do not conceive, let go of the future. Do not meditate or do not think. Right? It's the past. Do not meditate. Just rest. And then there's anchoring the mind internally. So imagine that in the center, so I'm going to follow, Bob Rinpoche's instructions imagining that in the center of an 8-petaled lotus in your heart, you generate the image of a Buddha of your choice, or a Lama of your choice, teacher of your choice, or a sphere of light that is their essence. Right? So it could be a sphere of light, which is the essence of any particular Buddha, or any particular Lama, any particular teacher, lineage holder, etc. And while we do this, we just gently anchor the mind, remaining without distraction on the support of attention, maintaining the position of the gaze, free from the defects of being too tense or too relaxed. Besides the awareness of a remote watcher, there's nothing to do. And we rest gentle, flexible, in a natural ease, without rejecting or adding anything, without hope or fear, relaxed in the relaxation itself. Right, so I'm going to try and read Eric's mind. So if it's Padampa Sangye, as the sphere of light in his heart, imagining this like wild yoga, with that energy of intense power, clarity, humor, intensity. And in the most relaxed way as possible. Gently holding that presence, that hope or fear, especially without fear of all of the centuries since he has passed. Now, it doesn't matter. In your heart, there could be a light that's the same as Longchenpa, or the essence of Jigme Lingpa, or third Karmapa, or Yutok. Or Bokar Rinpoche. And when Bokar Rinpoche said, holding the posture, again, depending on how you're seated, and again, our bodies can be very different, but letting yourself settle into a meditative posture, legs crossed, but you can be sitting in a chair, sitting on a couch. It's fine. Hands in meditation mudra or on your knees, right? But relaxed, right? We're not tight. If you're tight like this, like fists, relax. I notice your jaw. Go like this. Let it go. All right. Eyelids, are they tight? Or all of the fine muscles around your head, right? Just let those relax. I say chest open, right? As if your shoulders are the wings of a vulture soaring through the sky. So having your chest open. Neck slightly bent. Eyes can be downward or they can be directly in front. It's kind of bodhisattva-like gaze. Back straight, but not unduly straight or not harshly straight. Relax. You can also do this laying down. And as you focus on either the Yidam or the Lama or the Tigle, that is the essence of either the Yidam or the Lama, try to let go of time and distance. And what I mean by this is settling into the very profoundly heartfelt sense that there is no separation between you and them. There's no work on your part. No need to try and recreate something. And really gently come back to the group. And I'd like to see if anybody has any questions or reflections on their experience. And that can include actually a little bit of a reflection on the differences, right? These techniques all have slightly different kind of tone or experience. Some can feel comfortable. Another one might feel really uncomfortable. And
Something you mentioned very early on today was worrying about the world being there. And that's something that kind of I mentioned last time we met that I felt like the visualized or like emanated techniques where I felt like there was so much more effort that I was putting in to like concentrate on them. And so I've been intentionally working on those over the past couple of weeks. And I feel like that what you said earlier relates a lot to how I've been feeling about it. Like I'm worrying that the visualization is gonna go away. And I've noticed that. And like so I've been like, oh well, okay.
There's so many people out there.
So what? Just kind of a trusting that like this orb of light or whatever I'm working with at the time is can be there or can pop up again or whatever. Yeah, that's been good. That has made it a lot better.
Yeah. So a little bit like object permanence.
A little bit, because like because it feels like it's just a it's just a thought, right? Like it's it's not an out there object, right? So so I don't feel like it doesn't feel solid, I guess. But Actually, this is not a thought I had. I feel like I had before, but something we've talked about in private is like those kind of karmic objects do pop up again and again and again. And like, and so even this is kind of like that. Like, yeah, they're trusting into the, like I said, the emanated object being there even when even when I'm not like looking at it really, really hard, trying really hard to look at it. Yeah, object permanence is a really good way to put it.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think closely related to this is this kind of notion that we have of it's kind of, I mean, it's a notion, but it's also a little bit of a threat kind of that we have towards phenomena. Like, I need to hold this together. I am holding this together. Like the I being the center of the web, right? Is somehow the most important thread out of the entirety of the web, which is, makes my little fossil companion so powerful, because my fossil companion kind of points out, like, Justin, like, all of your lifetimes have happened. Well, many of them have happened since I became fossilized, and you're just this blip, this flickering light that comes and goes and comes and goes and comes and goes and comes and goes, and you're not that important. Right? But I think that there is also something to be said. So I tend to believe, and it's actually, I think this is also Jamgon Contra Vajrayana says this in creation and completion, the kind of technology behind creation and completion, arising, dissolving, arising, dissolving. Like, the more we get involved in that, the more we get comfortable with that kind of just, natural play of things. For people who have never done it before, they'll get kind of magnetized by the nature of a visualization. It's so incredible, and wow, it's like, it's fun, right? It's playful. And then as it dissolves, sometimes there can be a little bit of a fear factor of like, holy shit, this thing I just created is like going away. But so is all of this going to go away too, right? And that this is kind of one of the kind of benefits of training in a practice, any kind of creation and completion, but even this, right? So, holding a tigle or a small yidam or a small guru in one's heart. Because we're usually at our worst when we feel cut off from everything, right? When we feel separate in all of this. And so the beautiful thing about this is it allows us to be able to kind of, come to the sense that, oh, this is always here. But before we actually settle into that, it's this push play of like, holy shit, where'd it go? I'm all alone, oh no, wait, there it is. Just like the object permanence.
Yeah, I mean, it's also like, because it is like, when it's not there, it is dissolving, right? Like, it's funny, like, it's doing me a little brain trick, like like I'm not so trust is also a big part of it for me.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad you said that. And I mean, I think that, this is what repeated practice does, is it builds trust, right? That these aspects are always available, are always here. They may not always be apparent, right, in the moment. We can go through a period of anxiety, for example, and then it feels like a lot of work to be able to kind of feel comfortable and at ease. But that will naturally shift, even if it feels like it won't. And then the confidence arises. Yeah, I'm glad we're talking about this, because I was actually talking with somebody earlier today who was a monk in Thailand, and they were sharing a really beautiful story about how their practice came to be demystified over time by just, sticking with it. And but they were saying like how mythical the whole thing got in the beginning. But then just by returning to practice all the ordinary moments or even the boring moments or the painful moments of practice, all it's almost like we're inviting a number of wisdom beings by having all of these experiences. Each one is informing us like, no, this is part of it too. This as well. The boredom, the fear, the anxiety, the lack of faith, the tremendous faith, the confidence, the lack of confidence, and but the more we stay with it, the more we're able to kind of weather the highs and the lows of it and be able to shift experience. Maybe a lot of this is just a matter of trust or faith or confidence born out of a lot of experience of the way it all comes and goes and flow. A little bit like it's kind of interesting, like teaching Dharma and having young kids and watching them, like, for example, develop socially or develop. One of my kids, I was like, I was never like a team sport athlete, but one of my sons is learning how to play basketball, and he's on this team that's where everybody is so good. And the first time I took him, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be like a disaster. Like these kids are incredible, right? Like I've never seen, and they're like the not good team. you know? And it's been like incredible to watch him like go through a different version of these kinds of things, but it's really basically like confidence building by like, and there's a lot of fear in the beginning, anxiety, tentativeness, but the more, even if, it's not necessarily the case that his skill level is like expanding exponentially, his comfort level is, and this kind of is a little bit like some of the experiences I had teaching meditation to correction officers where, you know, in the moment of not recognizing their own dysregulation in the moment they settle into awareness and they can experience their dysregulation, the first thing to blame is me. The second thing to blame is meditation itself. Because they're like, oh, this is not, I don't like this. It's like, I don't blame you. Like, I don't like your job and what it's doing to you, and it seems like you don't either. um, but yeah, and imagine, right? Like, this is great because this is like, it's like a process of tenderization. And imagine somebody, these people like Milarepa or folks who will put themselves in little confined spaces for long periods of time, just tenderizing over time. And just, the more you sit, the more the deeper fears and anxieties eventually come. And the more kind of abstract ones, the more, mythical ones, imaginary ones. And really the especially when it comes to shamatha, the process of settling into ease is really a process of settling into openness, right? And, you know, openness is the half sister of acceptance, right? But both of these things can be a little difficult, right? Openness means, oh, I recognize things. And then after a certain element of time or period of time, after sitting with things, we begin to accept. Yeah. What else is on people's minds or experiences other than love, Eric? Jasper. Or Remy, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Happy to.
Usually it's random.
I wanted to share that I had this experience today, or I was able to recognize in my practice today just like how deep, how like I've never really had a connection to guru, and I felt like I just like had this moment where it was um like I've just been really connected to Yutuk, and I'm just like, oh, he's just like wants to be here, you know? So that was really sweet.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah.
It's like less effort. Like it's not like I think I mean for years I've done medicine Buddha practice. And so I find it like it's like I was like on, I don't know, the right track, or like kind of like circling around this thing because like they're connected so much, you know? And my cat's like playing with my pants. And so it just felt really sweet to like be like, okay, I'm gonna just approach this practice today really simply and just like open my heart. And it just felt like he just like came like just like manifest. So yeah.
Yeah. Like a little cuckoo clock.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you for that. What other thoughts or feelings?
Um,
Yes.
I mean, this is like oft given advice, and I bet we've all heard it, but what has been really helping me with the holding visualization on my crown or in my heart, I've also was doing Utok today, and it's sort of like I'm trying to hold it and trying to hold it, and then as I recognize like the, you know, whatever the reception is getting whatever weak, like I'll just go into almost like a kind of coloring book, like, well, let's go to the petal of the flower with the burning sword on the wisdom text and be like, and just sort of start breaking it up into these elements. Or like I'm in his soft rainbow halo, or I'm in the other flowers contents, or I'm in his nice silk and his bling or whatever. Like, and I'll just sort of like not try to hold that whole thing, lotus flower, moon disc, utok, his implements. Like I'll just go. And then as you do add a little bit, you get this kind of coloring book effect where now you've composited some pixel chunks, and then I'll try to rest in like, okay, now whole organism you took, not so much like zoom, but kind of oscillating in and out of that is just like helping me like stabilize it.
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. Please, Eric.
Yeah, what I noticed, just to share a little bit, is that for a lot of years I only focused on shamatha meditation, so really only going for shamatha sessions. Over the last 2 years, I noticed that if I do Ngundro-like practices, Vajrasattva, Guru Yoga, and somehow I noticed that for me at the moment it feels better to make kind of a combination of a shamatha practice and a Ngundro-like practice, and to take them into one session, because it seems to me, in the first place I thought no, I really have to separate them, but now it more seems to me like no, not really. That's not what my experience is telling me. My experience is telling me that they are reinforcing each other. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. It does. It does. So I want to share a short passage from this great little book called Shine and Laktung in the Dzogchen teaching by Namkhai Norbu. Um, and I initially was interested in this because of the I don't know how to describe this other than saying maybe the inadvertent focus on a lot of effort in shamatha that we sometimes experience, at least in terms of pedagogy in the Karma Kagyu tradition. And so Namkhai Norbu, so I'll read a couple passages from this. It says, according to the Tantric and Dzogchen teachings, the way of applying meditation and sutra teachings is passive. Indeed, on the path of renunciation, what is meant by Lak Tong, which we'll get into, which is the kind of superior insight, like a vipassana, is the intuitive understanding of our empty nature, the state of prajnaparamita, which may arise after months, years, perhaps even entire lifetimes dedicated to the practice of shine. Simply, it is expected that as a result of the practices of purification and meditation, Laktong arises. Right? And so in this kind of case, it really is that when we stabilize, right, focusing on shamatha is really about, letting the mind stabilize, become still. And in that stillness, awareness cannot help but naturally become experienced, right? There's no effort that's necessarily needed. However, if we bring effort to shamatha, then it has to happen because we're bringing that kind of level of expectation, right? We kind of have to go through a little bit more of a harder experience, kind of like, I mean, I know this is going to be a weird analogy, but being in a relationship that ends and then putting a lot of pressure on oneself, the next relationship has to be, I want to be with this kind of person with these qualities and all this, and then so you're coming to it with all these ideas. And because you can only really see what you think is ideal through that lens, it's going to take however long it does, or never, find this kind of perfect person. And so the kind of quality of the experience you're going to have afterwards is going to be very different than, all right, well, that went whichever way it went, and what the hell, and I don't know what to do next. So I'm just gonna walk out the door and just, and then something will happen, right? It might not lead you to a relationship, but an experience will happen. But if you keep yourself open, it is inevitable that some kind of experiences will happen, right? As opposed to setting everything up in a really kind of tight way. And sometimes shamatha is taught in that way, where it's like, a lot of effort. With a lot of effort and straining, of course, awareness can't come in because we're not particularly relaxed. When our mind is settled and there's relaxation, awareness just naturally begins to come. And so, his later, actually, just in the next page, he says in Dzogchen, shine or shamatha is not considered contemplation because emptiness is just an experience. To contemplate means instead to recognize one's fundamental nature, which consists of the non-duality of the calm state and of movement, shine and laktong. Shine is the calm state or the mind when it's still. Laktong really is just awareness, but you have to be aware of something, and that's the movement of things, thoughts, experiences, leg falling asleep, random flashes of emotion, Um, elsewhere, he says that the practice of shine and dzogchen consists of in not following the thoughts that occur, remaining present and maintaining the undistracted calm state. The movement of thought in and of itself is not negative because it is part of our nature. However, it must be governed by presence. Even tantric practitioners have this knowledge, although not completely, as in dzogchen. For example, in their practice, they sing and dance, integrating movement and working with energy. Right. And so again, this can easily be, seen as some kind of stratification where Dzogchen's at the top, or these other things are not as good. But when we look at them more in terms of the dynamics at play, and this is true of Mahamudra as well, is that shine or shamatha at its best, so to speak, really is just resting into the present moment and all of the ease and relaxation of that, right? Not getting wrapped up in too much effort or work. And this is typically leads to this experience of quiescence. And within this state of quiescence, then great clarity is able to be experienced because there's not necessarily a lot of movement. as we stay in this experience, and all sorts of stuff happens and bubbles, right? Awareness itself, right, by its very nature, has that same kind of stability. Like we're basically harmonizing, right, with the stability of Rigpa when we settle into the experience of shamatha, like in a very open and relaxed way, without having to get so involved in, like he says, singing, dancing, ritual, ringing bells and drums, and other kinds of things. Not to say that that's not good, because you can do that while being in a state of awareness as well. But I think what is the kind of more important point here is developing, kind of piggybacking off of what was coming up with Tony's comments, the development of confidence and, basically wisdom around, what these practices actually are. Because in its kind of like grossest state, shamatha is just a disciplined thing of just sitting still. I must sit still. But it's so much more than that, right? It's just like somebody just saying ballet is just dance, or whatever, right? Like, some people are like, French food is just snobby, right? But if you really stop to consider like the culinary beauty of French cooking, there's some like hardcore sophistication and, beauty in it. Yeah. And so from that state of ease, Nundro becomes like ballet, right? A recitation of a mantra is beauty. Sitting and waiting for a bus, while you're really settling into shamatha is, being in this constant play of appearance that it is coming and going, all of this kind of stuff. And then we get distracted, someone steps on your foot, you fall right out. Right? And so this is where that confidence piece comes, is so I can settle back in, right? That person who stepped on my foot or stole my seat or whatever, or gave me a weird look. Um, we have to learn how to deal with. Other questions? Thoughts? Feelings? Good. All right. Well, what if we moved on to the next aspect of shamatha? Does that feel too abrupt? No? Okay. Great. So the next is so anchoring the mind internally, right, was what we had just done with this 8-petaled lotus. And either the guru or the lama, I'm sorry, the guru, lama, or yidam, or tigle in the center. But then the anchoring the mind without an object is actually one that I rather enjoy. And this is so either we anchor the mind first on the great emptiness of all material phenomenon, external and internal, or we rest in the clear light, the great emptiness after the dissolution of material phenomena into one another. So just do that. It's good to have a sense of humor.
Got it. Done.
Done, right? Mic drop. There will one day be a Buddha who becomes enlightened by just the mic. The statue of them will be like a little mic on a pulley that drops and pulls back up, it drops and pulls back up. Right, but I like this one simply because I'm an Aquarius, and I like to be in space. Yes, exactly. uh, yes. So so this, and this is where, Shine or shamatha, uh we could say, proves um its family connection to Mahamudra and Dzogchen, right? By this being a form of Shine or shamatha, is just resting directly into the natural state and just settling like this. So we don't worry about anchors, right? We could say that you're settling directly into the Rigpa state. And really, this is more about presence than it is about looking for anything. And very gently bring yourself back. And take a moment to notice A, what that was like, and then B, what your mind is feeling like now. And maybe some things to kind of like feel into is to what extent was effort or efforting needing to happen? Was the experience too diffuse and there needed to be some kind of, like putting a stake in the ground, this kind of, act of returning back to, did it feel good? Not good? Let's analyze it.
I have a big like fuzzy housefly in this room I'm in right now, and I'm like, it's like 30 degrees outside. I don't even know how it's alive, but it's in here with me, and I'm just trying to be like, you have a right to be as much as I do. It's my apartment, but whatever, you're here, like it's okay. And occasionally it's like really in my kind of like the tight sensory field and the buzzy like furry wings, and I'm just feeling myself like whipped off my seat when those kind of close flybys come, and then weird little ego spiral of like, God, I look goofy, like swatting on the Zoom and like trying to sit still, and I don't know, just a funny like feeling like, oh, I'm really getting like, I feel my sit bones and I'm in the gravity and it's starting, the snow globe is starting to sift, and then just one little tiny sentient being who's really not going to harm me in my
Mhm.
intellect, fully aware. And it's just like blasted off the center. And then it's like, whatever, come back slowly. And then it happens again. It's just enraged at this little creature, but also trying to bless it.
Yeah. And that process of making friends with experience. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, the fly's like, how's your mind now?
Um, I think for a long time, I had this pattern of sort of assessing my experience against, like, when I would think of quiescence, I don't know, this like painting scape of quiescence, right? That like has, I'm sure it's infinite, but like for me, it has a particular kind of representation, and then the comparison would always be in relationship to that. And now more and more, um, actually just kind of enjoy that like quiescence for me is much more like a Queen album or something than like this kind of idyllic pastoral countryside kind of thing. And that just widens the range of things that like feel beautiful, I think, beyond just the constraints of like, here's what calmness means or whatever. And there's like a punk rock element to like smashing that when you see it. That is fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, totally. Totally. Yeah, I mean, it's a good example of like how like language like I posted something on Instagram about language being a psychopath. Um, but it kind of is, right? Like language does not, language is like this jaggedy thing that sometimes cannot capture anything at all, especially around this. And then other times, oddly enough, language will totally like help induce a particular kind of clarity or vastness but I think what is necessitated at some point is like smashing the language up a little bit, because quiescence, yeah, good term. I don't have any beef with quiescence, right? But the issue is like when that just becomes oh, this experience equals that in an unexamined way, right? And then that term becomes a little dead. When I think that, shine or shamatha is really tricky in that way. It's really easy to, it's a little bit like nundro. Nundro's, described as, preliminaries, right? It's the beginning in all of this, but it is so much more than that. But if you just relegate it to, oh, there's things in the beginning you do, I'm an advanced practitioner. And all of a sudden it's like, wait, what? Like, what am I doing this for? Like, and so yeah, this kind of shamatha is a way of like settling beyond language. It's interesting to kind of think about. And here comes the poet.
It's funny that we landed here because my experience was I was having a really like intense sensory experience of an image that has been showing up a lot in my poetry, which is the ocean. And kind of feeling thought activity as like the waves, like a tumultuous ocean, and then sinking down and kind of just going back and forth, up and down. And it's at the same time holding the realization like this is all actually the same thing. Like these aren't different, it's all the ocean. And coming to a really a really deep appreciation for language in that moment. And also an appreciation for its inadequacy to really explain that, like loving both, because I mean language too encompasses everything and can't, which is part of why I love it so much and is so fun. And I actually feel inspired if I could share a poem that's coming to mind right now.
Yay.
Let's see. The most relevant. So this piece is titled Not Looking for a Question, but the Waves from Which the Question Arises. Be luminous, I asked of nights kneeling where the hot ground hisses, wandering through phenomena, distraught and forthright as pilgrimage. I've crossed no deserts, drawn no water from the earth. It wasn't dim, it was the ocean, out, a surface flashing the depth of its awareness. Gone, encompassing. The bay, the hills, the sky, harbored on a line, incomplete through drifting absence. Drought pours inland, more than a current for the senses. Salt collecting in the folds of ash gray veils, rippling far from the sea. Rippling at the edge of verdant waters, where a doom sinks its calm blue body into black depths. Impromptu, the swell gravitates on. Of itself, the surface a sheath sloughing off, adrifts, ephemeral in its scroll, ends in a mirage without exit. The entire expanse holding a single wave over and over. Not once in this life have I ever felt grounded. Not once have I swept my home conclusively.
That's really beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jasper.
Wow.
Love it. See, the bikinis are the firework bikinis are at play in New Jersey. Yeah. We're a weird species, aren't we? Quite odd. Yeah. Well, maybe we'll pause here. Just this nice silence. And yeah, we'll be back together next Tuesday. So I invite you to experiment with all of this. Especially this just settling into presence, like Shine or Shamatha, as a gateway to familiarizing yourself with awareness as presence, right? Or mind as vast stability. And experiment with technique. I mean, this is really like what this is, right? Like different techniques being offered. And get creative. Maybe everyone can thank Jasper for this homework. Maybe everyone should bring a little poem, born of your meditation. It's like a Shine series. And Shine looks like shiny. So maybe we could say it's our shiny series. So cool. Let's see that. So very briefly, we can dedicate the marriage. May all sentient beings be able to settle into this vast, open, spacious beauty that is their mind. And may all beings lovingly struggle to find the words that will help liberate others. Take very good care of yourselves, one another, and see you soon. And thank you so much for today.